All right, let's talk about one of those core JavaScript concepts that everyone needs to know, scope. Now, I know it can sound a little intimidating, but trust me, by the end of this, you're going to feel super confident explaining it. Seriously, just picture it. Every single variable you write just floating around, bumping into each other, overwriting each other by mistake, it would be absolute chaos, right? A total mess. Your code would be a nightmare to debug. So how does JavaScript stop that from happening? How does it manage all that potential traffic and keep things from grinding to a halt? Well, there's one key concept that acts like a traffic cop for all your variables. And that concept is scope. Yep, that's it. At its heart, scope is just the set of rules that says where your variables are allowed to live and where they can be accessed. It answers the simple question, hey, can I see that variable from over here? Okay, here's the best way to think about this. Picture scope as a box. That's it. Every time you create a new scope, you're basically making a new box. And if a variable is born inside that box, it stays in that box. Seriously, hold on to this box idea. It's going to make everything else we talk about just click. So if scope is a box, it makes sense that we need to know what kinds of boxes we can even use, right? Well, in JavaScript, there are three main types, and each one has its own set of rules. We've got global scope. That's the biggest box. Then there's function scope, which, you guessed it, is made by functions. And finally, block scope, which is probably the one you'll be dealing with most of the time in modern JS. All right, first up, global scope. This is the big one. It's like the giant shipping container that holds your entire program. Any variable you declare way out in the open, not inside any function or curly braces, that's a global variable. And here's a perfect, simple example. We declare letName equals phase_on right at the top level. It's living in that global box, and that means you can access it from literally anywhere else in your code. Super simple, right? But a word of caution. You don't want to clutter this global space. That's how you get back to that traffic jam we were trying to avoid. Okay, let's zoom in a bit to our next type of box, function scope. It's exactly what it sounds like. Whenever you create a function, you're also creating a private little world, a new box just for that function's variables. And anything inside is totally locked away from the outside. And here we can see that box doing its job. The variable message is created inside the greet function. It's trapped in there. If you try to console.log it from the outside, nope, it's like trying to see through a brick wall. JavaScript will throw an error and basically say, what are you talking about? That variable doesn't exist out here. Now this is a real game changer in modern JavaScript, block scope. Anytime you see a pair of curly braces, think if statements, for loops, even just a random pair of blocks on their own, you've just created a brand new tiny little box. The key here is that this only works for variables you declare with let and const. And what's really important to get here is just how temporary these block scope boxes are. Look at this if statement. The variable x is born inside those curly braces, and the second the code moves past that closing brace, poof, it's gone. It existed for just a moment, completely invisible to the outside world. Okay, so we've got our different boxes. But what happens when you nest them? You know, a box inside of a box inside of another box? How does JavaScript know where to look to find the variable you want? Well, that's where something called the scope chain comes in. And heads up, this is a concept that interviewers love to hear. So, how does this search process work? Well, JavaScript is pretty systematic about it. First, it looks in the current box it's in. Is the variable here? No? Okay, no problem. It then climbs up one level to the box that contains the current one. It looks there. Still not there? It just keeps climbing up, box by box, all the way to the giant global scope. And only if it gets all the way to the top and still can't find it, then it throws a reference error. All right, let's make this super practical. Because knowing about scope isn't just a trivia question, right? It's about how you write better, cleaner code, and yeah, how you absolutely nail those technical interviews. So let's dive into a few common mistakes and pro tips. Okay, this is the classic interview question. What's the deal with var, let, and const? And the biggest difference comes down to scope. See, var is the old way of doing things, and it's a bit leaky. It doesn't care about block scope. It'll just leak right out of those curly braces, which can cause all sorts of weird bugs. Let and const, on the other hand, are the modern solution. They respect their block scope box and stay put, which makes your code way more predictable and safe. Here's another fun one you might get asked about, variable shadowing. So what happens if you have a variable out in the global scope, let's say language, But then inside a function, you create another variable with the exact same name. Which one does JavaScript use? Well, thanks to the scope chain, we know the answer. It always finds the closest one first. So the inner variable wins and temporarily casts a shadow over the outer one, hiding it from view. So let's wrap this up into a killer interview strategy. Here's your checklist. 1. Always say you prefer let and const over var. 2. Clearly explain the difference between function and block scope. 3. To really show you know your stuff, talk about the scope chain and how JavaScript finds variables. And if you want to go for bonus points, casually mention that closures are a concept that's built directly on top of how scope works. That shows you're connecting the dots. And really, that's the whole point. Scope isn't just some abstract definition. It's the rulebook. It's the traffic controller that keeps your code organized and stops that chaotic traffic jam from ever happening. Getting a solid handle on it is, no joke, one of the biggest steps you can take toward writing really clean, professional code.
So there you have it. You get the rules of the road now. You know how to use those boxes to keep everything tidy and prevent collisions. So the only real question left is, now that you've mastered the rulebook, what amazing things are you going to go build with it?